Hello everybody, good evening, and today we'll be playing Pitch Control, Orzhov Pitch Control on Mad Meta Magic. Now, this is a list I've been wanting to retry for a while, but I didn't have Liliana's of the Veil, so now I actually can play it. And the idea behind this deck is we get a lot of early game value with Ley Lines of Sanctity, Ley Lines of the Void, Chancellor of the Annex, a potential Chancellor of the Dross, and we play like black-white smallpox, like Lingering Souls type deck into Lily, Sorin, and Unburial Rites on our massive zero-turn plays. So we'll see what happens here. We're basically just playing black-white control, and in the sideboard we have various things for like against go-wide creature decks or against combo decks, and Tron and the like. So, we're going to see how this does. It's been a long time since I played a deck like this, and, I hope it does well. I had a different deck I wanted to play, but I looked at it again, and it's one of the decks that is on my list to play immediately after the new Zendikar set releases, so I'm going to hold off on it until then, but we've got some very, very spicy decks coming up for that release, and I'm super stoked about it. Alrighty, round one, here we go. Let's see if we can make that magic meta mad. Let's see. Chancellor of the Annex into Smallpox seems kind of fun. We can pitch Unburial Rites, which gets us most of the way to getting Chancellor onto the board. You know what? I'm going to keep. We're going to see what happens here. Okay, opponent mulligans to 6, mulligans to 5. Oh no, opponent. The Soul Spike is currently uncastable, and is probably one of the cards we will pitch given the opportunity. Okay. So reveal Chancellor of the Annex and start Godless Shrine tapped. Pass the turn. So my opponent plays an Urza's Mine and throws a map into a Chancellor. Oh, hang on. Porter needs me to retrieve a toy of his. One moment. Alright. Now, I think we have lands that care about swamps and plains, so I'm going to sack Concealed Courtyard to Smallpox, and we're going to pitch Chancellor. It's the card we are least likely to want out of our hand right now. Opponent does lose their only Tron land and is forced to discard. Opponent has to discard a Karn. Alright, pass the turn. If we could top deck like a Liliana here, that'd be amazing. I also don't think I could pick two stronger effects to have started with versus my opponent's hand at the moment. So we untap, we draw Lingering Souls, play Concealed Courtyard, pass the turn. Okay, opponent plays a Forest and Sylvan Scrying. Okay, they get a Power Plant. We untap, we draw Liliana of the Veil. Play Liliana. Uptick, we're going to discard Unburial Rites, because that way if we draw a land, we can cast it next turn, getting back Chancellor. Okay, opponent has to discard Karn. Ooh, boy, okay. So if we draw a land, we're Unburial Rightsing Chancellor. If we don't draw a land, we're just casting Lingering Souls. Okay, we draw a Chancellor of the Dross. So in this scenario, I kind of want to be able to Soul Spike. So, tick up Liliana. No, we're going to discard Chancellor. I was thinking about discarding Lingering Souls and then casting it out of grave, but opponent has to discard a Wormcoil Engine. We cast Lingering Souls. I guess at this point we can just discard whatever we draw other than lands. Opponent does have Tron, but nothing to play with it. We draw Shining Shoal. So, take up Lily. Opponent has to discard their last card. We discard Soul Spike. Flashback Lingering Souls. And attack for 2. Next turn, I don't think I'm going to take any chances. I'm going to definitely make my opponent sack 2 lands. I could get greedy and take up Liliana here, but I think just alting her is better. And by a long shot. Yeah, it is. So, we're going to put our opponent's permanents into 2 piles. They'll probably just keep the pile that has 2 Tron pieces. Okay. Shock Hollowed Fountain, and on Burial Rites, Chancellor of the Annex. Okay. Now, whenever your opponent casts a spell, counter it unless they pay 1. That's a pretty good static effect to have on a creature like this. Okay, opponent goes down to 13. They have Tron. That is alarming. We draw Shining Shoal. Go to combat. Attack for 9. So they basically have to have land Ugin here. Pass the turn. And they have to land downtick Ugin. I don't know if Ugin has 7 loyalty when it enters. Alright, but we got our first game and we beat a meta deck with a very not meta deck. So, big fan. We're going to bring in Damping Spheres. Hopefully that makes our matchup a little bit better. Inquisitions, Thoughtseize, and our Surgical as well as Fields are coming into the deck. Now, what's going out of the deck? Chancellor of the Dross and Soul Spike. Those are probably our worst spells versus our opponent's deck. I'm also going to cut Sickening Shoal and Shining Shoal entirely. Sun Scour is not very good. So a lot of our pitch spells are good versus creature decks. And our opponent's deck is just straight up not a creature deck. And I think I'm actually going to go down Collective Brutalities all the way for Stony Silence. And we're really going hard. Like, we brought in like almost our entire sideboard. I need to cut one more card. Oh, Leyline of the Void is technically worse than... I mean, I guess Collective Brutality is good for the Drain mode or the Duress mode, potentially. Leyline of the Void is bad because we have Surgical. We want to be able to Surgical one of their Tron lands. We did side into 24 lands worth noting, so we can keep hands that are a little iffier, I guess, on mana. Okay, this is really not a bad hand to start with, so we're going to keep, throw down Leyline, reveal Chancellor. Okay, opponent starts Urza's Tower, and they pass. Okay, we untap, we draw Elish Norn, play Flagstones, pass the turn. Leyline of Sanctity prevents our opponent from, I guess, ticking up Karn, but that's about it. They throw a Chromatic Sphere into Chancellor. Man, that feels so good. So good. We untap. We draw Urborg. Play Flagstones. We'll keep the new one. And we'll tutor up Godless Shrine. Okay. Pass the turn. And I think just play Liliana, tick up, discard Chancellor, tick up, discard Unburial Rites, cast Unburial Rites is probably going to win us this game. Opponent kept a one-lander versus a deck that's Smallpox? Our opponent saw Smallpox. Opponent, what are you thinking? Alright, play Lily. Uptick. Discard Chancellor. Opponent discards Karn. But Chancellor there took out, like, our opponent had, what was it? They were on one land, and they were really banking on green mana. And if my opponent has an Ancient Stirrings here, yeah, we time-walked them by revealing a Chancellor in our opening hand. That's absurd. Okay, opponent plays a map. We untap. We draw Field of Ruin. Ooh. Big oof. So, I think we play Field. Uptick Lily. Discard Unburial Rites. This is a deck of my entire own design, by the way. I did not steal anybody's idea for this deck. This one is straight from the sick and twisted mind of Kano. So, Unburial Rites Chancellor. Pass the turn. Next turn... So next turn, if they have to crack map, they'll have basically no mana to play anything. And we have Field. Alright, they crack map. They get a Power Plant. They play Power Plant. They can play a 1-mana spell. We untap. We draw another Leyline. So, play Urborg. Tick up Lily. Make our opponent discard. We're going to discard Leyline. Opponent discards Wormcoil Engine. We're not going to play Sorin. And we're going to field... I guess we just field the tower now? We could wait until our opponent's draw step. It technically decreases the chance that they can draw a tower. So stop on their draw step. Field Tower. This is bad if they have a redundant tower, but I really think the extra mana taxing off of Chancellor... This is basically 7 mana Thalia right now. Oh, or is our opponent going to run Karn into Chancellor? Opponent, I'm so sorry. You gotta read the cards, buddy. Opponent concedes. Well, that was a quick match 1. I did not expect us to beat Tron. Honestly, I was like, this deck list is kind of far out of date, and I don't know if we're going to win anything, but we just took down a tiered deck. I'm very happy with that. I really like how this deck lines up. Because it's just like a bunch of really brutal taxing effects. Like you're making your opponent sacrifice lands, you're hitting their hand, you're making them sack creatures, discard cards, and then you're reanimating stuff out of the grave that's big and nasty. I really like this deck. Alright, we'll play first. Okay, well, we have pitch cards, we have Chancellor, but we only have 1 land, and I really wish we had 2. This hand is actually playable, but it's super risky. I'm going to mulligan. Okay, this one is much better. We might hose our opponent with a random Leyline of the Void. I'm going to stick back, I think, on Burial Rites. Okay, start Leyline. You might be surprised how frequently just random Grave Hate or Hexproof actually is relevant in the modern metagame nowadays. Like, if my opponent is playing Dredge, he just lost. There's no way he can beat a Leyline of the Void game 1. Opponent reveals Chancellor of the Tangle. Ooh, opponent's doing something spicy as well. Interesting. Is it, this might be the Allosaurus Rider deck. The Neoform Neobrand. I can't remember the name of it. I get wrecked by it constantly. Okay. Traverse the Ulvenwald. They get a forest. They play a forest. Okay, this is actually Belcher, is what we're against. So we're going to play Fetid Heath and 2 modes, Duress, Drain, and we're going to pitch Lingering Souls. He's playing Oops All Spells. All right. Oh, man. Oh. Oh, jeez. Oh, opponent. I'm so sorry, but I'm not. Oh. Oh, man. Is this the, is it... Arclight Phoenix. Is this the Arclight Phoenix version? Untap, we draw Shining Shoal. Cast Lingering Souls. This is the Don't You Dare Play Leyline of the Void in the main version. Oh man, this is gonna kill me. This is how I die. I'm gonna die of laughter. Alright, opponent plays Undercity Informer. We draw planes, play a planes, go to combat, and attack for 2. We'll see if my opponent can kill us. We have Shining Shoal, so something else crazy might happen here. Okay, opponent attacks us for 2, They played map, they've played all these lands. Okay. Undercity Informer number 2. Cycle Cast Out. Get Leyline of Sanctity. Untap. We draw a second Shining Shoal. So go to combat. Attack our opponent for 2. Pass the turn. Our opponent could start milling us. I'm interested to see what happens. We could still lose because our opponent could have some crazy tech. But I actually made a deck tech for a deck like this that used Undercity Informer and 4 lands and Lay of the Land effects based on an old Belcher, a 7-land Belcher list, where the idea was you would mill yourself and then, I mean, we could deal damage to our opponent with a Shining Shoal. I'm gonna You know what? I'm going to do that because I don't want to get creeping chilled to death. Opponent casts a Serum Powder. We untap. We draw Chancellor of the Annex. Okay. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Opponent goes to 10. Wild Cantor. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to cast... We're going to target Wild Cantor. And we're going to choose Undercity Informer. And we're only going to take 3 damage, and they're going to kill their own Wild Cantor. Okay, Wild Cantor dies. Alright, untap. We finally draw a 4th land. So play Sorin. Make a token. Go to combat. And I think we're just going to hang back. And we might block with the spirits here. Can we draw flagstones? Play flagstones. Tick up, make a spirit. And attack for 1. Oh man, Chancellor is so brutal against them. Oh no. Oh, opponent, I am so sorry. You're playing a sweet deck and I love it and you're amazing because you're in the winner's bracket. Like, you beat somebody. Alright, opponent hits Sorin for 4. Sorin goes to 1. We untap, we draw another flagstones. Make a vampire. Go to combat. You know what, we'll hang back and block. I want to keep Sorin alive for as long as possible, just to do silly things. Okay, play flagstones, keep flagstones. And we're gonna get Godless Shrine tapped. Oh, actually I don't even think we need the Hollowed Fountain in this version of the deck. I think that was used when we were running like engineered explosives and stuff. Any draw here is good for us. Okay, opponent plays a Talisman of Resilience. I think they're just trying to ramp into playing Chancellor. You know what? I'll let them kill Sorin this time. We draw Smallpox. Alright, go to combat. Attack for 3. I'm not going to Smallpox yet. Hang on, how much mana does my opponent have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're a mana away from casting Chancellor, so I'm going to go ahead and Smallpox. We sack a Vampire. They sack an Undercity Informer. We sack Flagstones. They sack a land. Get a Godless Shrine. Tapped. And pass the turn. We have no choice on the tapping, but we do have a choice to pay some life. What do they exile? Open the gates? Oh, okay. Not a bad lay of the land effect. Opponent probably does not attack. This would be amazing if we top deck Soul Spike and land. Just in that order. Unburial Rites. Okay. Reanimate Chancellor. And that's probably going to be game. I can't believe we janked him out with the Leyline of the Void. I can't believe we're playing against the 4-land unexpected results. Or not unexpected results, oops all spells. It was like oops 4-land or whatever it's called. I'm excited to see somebody else playing this deck and being as janky as I am. Dylan_MTG, if you are a YouTube channel, I am going to find you. They're going to mill us. They milled 1 card just to get a little more information before they concede. Respectable. I don't think you're going to have a fun time against this deck, opponent. I apologize in advance. Thoughtseize, Inquisition, Surgical. I kind of want to bring in Damping Spheres, but I don't actually think that's right. Let me think. What do we bring in anything else? We might want these Field of Ruins just for more lands in the deck. We do have to cut some stuff. Collective Brutality, while it's decent, and it does kill a few things and drain. I'm gonna cut Soul Spike. I think I gotta cut Chancellors as well, which means no more Sickening Shoal. We don't have any other Grave Hate. I think this is as best as we can be set up for this. Hang on. He appears to be a... Yeah, no, he is a content creator. Big props to you, dude. I am very happy to see somebody else playing the deck that I love. And I'm sorry that you had to play against this. I really am. Okay. Here's the question. Is Chancellor of the Annex Inquisition Collective Brutality going to be enough? Chancellor of the Annex might shut down their initial game plan, and our opponent did mulligan. I'm going to keep, and I'm going to see if it is. Our opponent mulliganed to 5. Because if their initial mana is a Chancellor of the Tangle, and only 1, no Simian Spirit Guides, they can't cast anything. They start Leyline of Sanctity and reveal Chancellor of the Tangle. We reveal Chancellor of the Annex. Okay. Opponent gets a green mana. They have 4 cards left in their deck. They actually have the mana. Okay, that's good. We got ourselves a game. The biggest problem that I see right now is the rest of our hand doesn't do anything with our opponent having a Leyline like this. We need to get to a Smallpox, and quickly. If my opponent wins with damage instead of, like, Unearth on a Thassa's Oracle or something like that, our Shining Shoal could be good here. Okay, they play a Talisman of Resilience. So opponent is going to have quite a bit of mana here. We draw a Leyline of Sanctity, which is probably not going to do anything for us. Play a Fetid Heath and pass. Unfortunately, no Smallpox. Smallpox would be quite backbreaking for our opponent here. Spectre Shriek. Sure. There's nothing in our hand we actually want to keep here. They can take whatever they'd like. None of our... I think Shining Shoal is the most effective card, but that's only if they win with damage. Also, when I googled, I only found this person's Twitter handle. I have no idea if they're streaming or anything right now. That would be really funny if they are. Alright, they take Leyline of Sanctity, so they feel like targeting us is important. That's good to know. Our opponent exiles Chancellor of the Tangle from their hand. Actually, Spectre Shriek might be good in this deck, now that I think about it. Because, like, we're trying to get rid of some of the cards in our hand. Well, I guess we didn't need to do that, but... Okay, cast a Lingering Souls, pass the turn. Okay, opponent traverses. They play a Forest. We untap. We draw Inquisition. I'm just going to go ahead and flashback this now. Attack for 2. Charbelcher. Alright. They are playing Charbelcher. We get a Flagstones. Oh, we can Shining Shoal 7 damage onto a Spirit. That seems quite nice, actually. Get a Godless Shrine tapped. Go to combat. Attack for 4. Pass the turn. The problem is we don't have an answer to Charbelcher, so we basically have to draw a Leyline to deal with that, or kill our opponent somehow. I think they just start, like, Desperation activating Charbelcher. If they're 7 lands, the odds of them doing enough damage to actually kill us is quite low. Okay, we untap. We draw Sorin. Play Sorin. Manamorphose for our opponent, okay. Into black-green. And they're going to Charbelcher us. Okay, Shining Shoal. Choose any target. We'll choose that. Exile Chancellor. And we're going to choose Goblin Charbelcher as a source. Opponent still killed us. It was still a worthy try. We get to take a look at our opponent's deck now. We get to see exactly what's going on here. Okay. So our opponent's playing Powders, Charbelchers, Spectre Shrieks, Undercity Informers. They have Memories Journey. I love it. Oh, I love it. Okay. It doesn't look like they have an answer to Leyline, though. They could have one in their sideboard. They almost certainly do. But through Leyline, they'll try and just Thassa's Oracle. Alright. Is there anything we can do? Not really. Like, maybe Damping Sphere, but my opponent probably is not casting more than one spell a turn. Or I'll play first. Alright. I'm going to keep this. It was really effective the first time. The problem is they almost certainly can just kill us with Charbelcher, and we need to draw our own Leyline. We have no way to cantrip through our deck, so we have to just hope that Leyline of the Void is enough to cause them problems. Put a mulligans to 4. No Serum Powders. No Serum Powder activations, I should say. Stealth can. You can't see what I drank. They mulligan to 3. They reveal Chancellor of the Tangle. We start Marsh Flats and pass the turn. We are going to Collective Brutality Duress next turn. If my opponent plays a Wild Cantor to store their mana, we kill Wild Cantor. I didn't see Caravan Vigil, but I feel like they should be using that as a basic land ramp spell, especially if they are running Wild Cantor. They do get a Swamp, and they Utopia Sprawl. Okay? Okay, let's get a Godless Shrine tapped. Untap. We draw Marsh Flats. Play Marsh Flats. Crack Marsh Flats. Get a Swamp. And Duress. Chancellor of the Tangle, Swamp. I should have known that. Literally, it was public knowledge and already in the revealed zone. So we should have saved that for a second. Okay, opponent opens the gates. They reveal a forest. So they played their Swamp. We draw a Leyline of Sanctity, which will be nice. That should protect us from everything that isn't, what's it called? Charbelcher. Okay, traverse the Ulvenwald, they get their forest. We untap. We draw Liliana of the Veil. So play Flagstones. I'm going to cast Leyline just to be safe. Because we can't get Spectre Shrieked now, which means our opponent has a lot more dead top decks. Play a forest. They untap. They let us untap. We draw Thoughtseize. So Thoughtseize them. We'll take Chancellor. Then we're going to play Liliana. Okay. Godless Shrine tapped. Play Liliana. Take up Liliana. Discard Shining Shoal. And our opponent scoops it up. Mad respect, opponent. Mad respect. Dylan MTG, I love your deck. Alright. Well, we're 2-0, which are words I didn't think I'd be speaking today. And I'll see you guys in round 3. Alright, round 3, here we go. Okay. We have 2 dead cards, but we also have a Liliana and Grave Hate. I'm gonna keep. Okay, opponent starts Urza's Tower, Chromatic Sphere. Tron again, eh? Alright, we'll start Godless Shrine tapped. Pass the turn. Would not mind our Inquisition here. Or Smallpox. Smallpox would also be excellent, because we have so many cards we'd like to get rid of. Alright, we draw Chancellor of the Annex. So if my opponent plays a creature, we have Sunscour. The worst Sunscour in the universe. Pass the turn. Natural Tron. No searching, no extra draws. They had it. World Breaker. Wow, okay. So that hurts quite a bit. But luckily, we actually have an answer to this. Please let me draw Smallpox. That'd be amazing. Alright, Collective Brutality. So, let's go ahead and Duress. Take a look at what's going on. Because if my opponent has no threats to follow this up with, Sunscour is actually good. They do have a Worm Coil and a Karn Liberated. Okay. I don't want to show my opponent what's actually going on, and there's no way we're beating that. So, not that our opponent would necessarily be able to interpret what's going on here, But Ley Lines of the Void out, Damping Spheres in, Collective Brutalities out, Thoughtseize Inquisition in, Shining Shoal, Sickening Shoal out, Inquisition Surgical Field in, and then Chancellor of the Draw Soul Spike out, Stony Silence in, and then... yeah, we'll do this again. Alright, let's see if we can beat Tron again. Or if the first time was just kind of a fluke. We'll be on the play, which is extremely advantageous for us. I would love to play first. Leyline of Sanctity is pretty medium along with the rest of this hand, so I'm going to mulligan. This hand is much better, by far, actually. So we're going to put back Sun Scour. Opponent mulligan to 6. They mulligan to 5. Okay. Whoops. Gonna have to cut that part out. Sorry, Bone. Alright, Leyline of Sanctity. Play Concealed Courtyard, Inquisition our opponent. They have Chromatic Star, Ancient Stirrings, and a single land. So we're going to take Chromatic Star. Pass the turn. Opponent obviously will start Urza's Mine. They top deck another one. Another sphere, anyway. Stony Silence. Yeah, we'll start with that. Oh, with any luck, my opponent's going to top deck green mana. Alright, opponent does nothing. We draw Sorin. Play Damping Sphere. Pass the turn. Kind of feel like Black-White Pillow Fort right now. Opponent plays a Power Plant. It's actually a little scary. We draw a Swamp. Cast Lingering Souls. Pass the turn. Would love to top deck a land. Perfect. Play Godless Shrine. Play Sorin. Uptick Sorin. Attack for 2. Okay. Opponent passes. We draw Elish Norn. So downtick Sorin. Get an emblem. Attack for 6. Take our opponent to 12. Flashback Lingering Souls. Pass the turn. Even if they completed Tron here, I don't think Karn would do anything. And we have lethal on board. Okay. Opponent concedes. Not bad. Opponent did mulligan pretty low and keep a one-lander into major disruption, but, I mean, that's kind of the best we can hope for. No other last-minute adjustments. We will run it back, and we are going to have to do our own aggressive mulliganing to hope we can hit enough stuff to disrupt our opponent. We will be on the draw. So I'm really hoping for, like, Chancellor of the Annex, Stony Silence, Smallpox, Thoughtseize. All of those would be great. Also, Leyline of Sanctity is in the deck because I think it's slightly better than Collective Brutality. Okay, we have Chancellor of the Annex, Chancellor of the Dross, and 4 lands. Our opponent kept a hand with 7, though. I think we got a mulligan. Double Chancellor into double Hand Hate. That might be enough, but it's not great. We'll put back Elish Norn. We're going to try this. Okay, opponent starts Power Plant. Passes. We draw Sorin. So, Inquisition our opponent. They have Power Plant, Mine, Tower, Karn Liberated, 2 forests. Take Sylvan Scrying. Ooh, we get the super delayed Chancellor. We might get him. Okay, opponent plays an Urza's Mine. We untap. Draw Thoughtseize. I'm going to see if they play Karn Liberated into Chancellor of the Annex here. There's Tower. Gotcha! Alright. Everyone misses these reveal triggers, I'm telling you. That lets me potentially save a Thoughtseize for something else. Okay, we draw Urborg. So we'll go ahead and Thoughtseize. Opponent says, hell is your deck? We'll take their Walking Ballista. Opponent is holding Power Plant, Forest. Opponent says I'm getting so confused. They play a Forest and pass. We need a white source so we can play Lingering Souls, or we need Liliana. Okay, we got neither of those. We're going to try Thoughtseizing our opponent again, just to make sure they didn't top deck something big like Ulamog. Veil of Summer. They get to re-cantrip and counter our Thoughtseize. At the very least, we don't lose life. Pass the turn. I really should have kept the first hand I opened with. Yeah, because we're about to get wrecked by something here. 9 mana for a Walking Ballista. Alright, we untap. We draw Lily, whom we can't play. Okay, opponent Ancient Stirrings. They're definitely going to find something to wreck us with here. And there it is. Dang. Yeah, I am going to concede to that. Alright. Round 4. We'll play first. Versus an unknown opponent, I actually think this is fantastic. We will keep. Top deck here would be something like Urborg or Fetid Heath. I still am going to start Marsh Flats because, like, Flagstones is potentially like our highest high roll land to start with in this deck, but we are still playing a double black card, and if my opponent starts Land Arbor Elf, I'm gonna Smallpox. Like, it's too high of an upside to not do that. Like, you never know, we could be playing against Infect. I would even, against, like, Land Creature Opener from Burn. Land Creature Opener from anything, and I'm about gonna Smallpox. Okay, opponent starts Overgrown Tomb, untapped. Stitcher's Supplier. Okay. I don't know if I want a Smallpox still. Land Creature Opener from anything was not quite accurate. So we're going to fetch Marsh Flats, get Godless Shrine. Untap. We draw Iona. Play Swamp. Pass the turn. I'm not going to play Flagstones here because it's going to give it away. And my opponent may very well want a sack outlet for their Stitcher Supplier if they don't currently have one. So we might be able to nab a higher value creature off of Smallpox. And as well, we might, if my opponent is stuck on one land, Smallpox becomes like a certainty, like we need to do that. Okay. Opponent plays a Verdant Catacombs, they fetch, and find a Watery Grave. Untapped. A second Stitcher's Supplier. Okay. They mill a Narcomoeba, Stitcher's Supplier, and a Lands. This means they're getting back an Amalgam. The good news is we have a ton of Wraths, so I've got a feeling Wrath plus Leyline of the Void is probably how we're going to end up beating our opponent. Okay, they attack for 1. Okay, in comes Amalgam. We untap, and we draw Chancellor. Play Flagstones, and we're going to Smallpox. I probably should have Smallpoxed last turn, because, I mean, if we milled on our turn, because they would sack their Stitcher Supplier that they very much want in the grave, potentially, like, they could get a Prized Amalgam on our turn, which would be horrendously bad for us. Uro. I did not expect an Uro. Alright, pass the turn. So what do we want to draw? We want to draw Unburial Rites, because then we can Iona on black, and our opponent is probably dead in the water, other than whatever they have on board. Okay, they shock Breeding Pool. 2 mana. Are they just casting a Narcomoeba? Glimpse the Unthinkable, targeting themselves. Okay. Narcomoeba enters the battlefield, triggering a Prized Amalgam. They attack us for 5, we go to 9. Okay, they get back Prized Amalgam. We untap. We draw Lingering Souls. I'll play Lingering Souls because chump blocking is probably the only way we're staying alive, at least temporarily. I'm trying to think of other cards that we want to be drawing here. I think we're basically going to have to... Okay, Creeping Chill kills us, I think. Because our only main deck Wrath is a Singleton Sunscour. So we can block there, and go to 1. We can't mill them out. We're going to try and mitigate as much damage as possible. Ah, Silver Smote Ghouls. Okay, we untap, and we draw Cast Out, which will cycle. Chancellor. Okay. Well, the good news is this matchup should get a lot easier post-sideboard. Opponent is playing Pretty Wicked Self-Mill. So Damnation, Wrath of God, Bantu's Last Reckoning, Surgical Extraction in. I don't think we want the Hand Hate. So we're going to cut Inquisition. Smallpox, Collective Brutality is like pretty fine. Sickening Shoal, Shining Shoal. I mean, this is the matchup where the creature removal portion of our deck is really going to shine. I think... We need to cut 3 cards. And the 3 cards least likely to do anything against our opponent's deck is probably Soul Spike. I want to say Iona, but I don't know. I don't know that for 100% certain. Chancellor of the Dross might be our next worst. It is a big giant lifelinker though, which can help us stabilize. But I don't know if I want to get rid of Liliana, or I don't know if I want to get rid of Iona. Maybe we cut like a Lingering Souls and I just don't know how our opponent beats an Iona. I don't know how likely it is we cast her or get her down with Unburial Rites, but I'll cut 1 Chancellor of the Dross. Okay, we'll try it like this. I would love to play first. Both ley lines, 2 lands, Brutality. Keeping. Opponent mulligans to 6. Play Fetid Heath to start, pass the turn. Our opponent might have trouble with these 2 cards. They start Verdant Catacombs, pass. Okay, we draw Shambling Vent. Yeah, we're just gonna play Shambling Vent and pass. Landing Liliana now is pretty enticing, and I want to hold on to Collective Brutality and Shining Shoal to protect Liliana as much as possible. Our opponent fetches a Breeding Pool untapped. So they've got a Nature's Claim. Alright, they do. They take out our Ley Line. They play Crab. And they mill themselves, revealing a Vengevine. I'd like to draw a high cost, or a high CMC white card for Shining Shoal. That's what I would like to draw right now. I mean, technically it counts, right? So we have 2 plays. We can either play Liliana, or we can 2-mode Collective Brutality, pitching Iona. I kind of like putting Iona in the grave a little bit more than I like pitching her to Shining Shoal. So I think we're going to do that. We're going to kill and duress. Pitch Iona. Force of Negation, pitching Prized Amalgam. Wow. Alright. I did not expect a Force of Negation. Opponent's down to 2 cards in hand, but, I mean, if they cast 2 creatures, we are boned. You know, I wonder, this deck could probably play a Karn Great Creator package, and probably pretty well. We would have to swap up the main deck significantly because of the number of colorless cards that we would add. But, like, that feels like it might be pretty sweet. So opponent mills Polluted Delta, Merfolk Secret Keeper, and Glimpse the Unthinkable. Crab 2. They pass. We untap. We draw Wrath of God. Alright. So play Lily. Try to put an end to the crab cycle. We're not taking up here because we might need to Shining Shoal Vengevine. But if we can keep our opponent low on resources, and we prevent them from milling themselves too much, alright, they hardcast a Narcomoeba. We untap, we draw a Swamp. Okay. Well, I think what we're going to do is go pretty much completely shields down. Wrath of God. Tick up. But it goes down to 1 card in hand. This is going to make it difficult for my opponent to cast 2 creatures for Vengevine. They discard Silver Smote Ghoul. So the worst card our opponent could have is Glimpse the Unthinkable targeting themselves. That would be the most brutal thing. Okay, they play a land, and they play an Uro. This does let them reanimate Silver Smote Ghoul, which is a problem. Currently our only way to deal with Silver Smote Ghoul would be to animate Shambling Vent and block, which really I'm not above doing. We draw Chancellor of the Dross, which we do want in our grave. Okay. We make them discard Stitcher's Supplier, and we're going to pass the turn. Kind of hoping for Unburial Rites at this point. Kind of sucks because we will have to block with Shambling Vent, but opponent gets a card. They go to combat. If they don't attack, I'd be really surprised. Okay. Animate Shambling Vent. Offer trade. Opponent could sack to draw a card, but they don't. Gurmag Angler. Okay. Well, that is going to need to be down-ticked. Play Swamp. Down-tick on Gurmag Angler. Opponent's got to sack it. We're like barely keeping our opponent in check at all. Even that Gravecrawler is a big problem. Less so now. So, Smallpox. We'll sack Urborg. Take up Lily. That's a pretty awkward removal. Like, neither player has any resources right now. And my opponent has a ton of low mana cost stuff. So we untap, we get a Lingering Souls, which is pretty good. I almost upticked without thinking. I was like, oh, Lingering Souls, that's something we want in the grave, but... Okay, take up Liliana, pass the turn. Lingering Souls is letting us win the resource game right now, but if my opponent gets to like 2 black mana and cast any zombie and cast Gravecrawler, oh, we are so screwed. Okay, we draw Marsh Flats. Do we want to tick down Lily? Does this enable them to cast anything that they otherwise wouldn't be able to? I think taking the card out of hand is more important. Alright. Go to combat. Attack for 2. No blocks by the opponent. They go to 16. Flashback Lingering Souls. Pass the turn. Oh man, we are grinding them out, but just barely. Another Narcomoeba. Okay. Fetch with Marsh Flats. We'll get a Godless Shrine. Untapped. We draw Plains. Play Plains. I think ticking down is better. So tick down, make our opponent sack a Narcomoeba, and attack with 3 spirits. Okay, opponent goes to 13. They untap. They play Crab. We need to kill that crab somehow. We untap. We draw Chancellor. Well, we cannot cast Chancellor. We need to tick up here. Go to combat. At this point, I'm going to start swinging out. I should have swung out last turn. Well, no, actually, down ticking was fine, but I need to start swinging out now. Okay. Opponent recognizes that they do need to block. They probably want more creatures in their grave, and at this point, we're hoping they don't top deck lands. Because any amount of self-mill could go horrendously bad for us, like it is right now. So our opponent gets a Narcomoeba. Oh, they don't have any creatures that can take advantage of that. Okay, so Narcomoeba is actually just probably about the best thing that could have happened there. Now that I properly evaluated this, I saw this glimpse and I thought it was a prized amalgam. Okay, we top deck Flagstones. So play Flagstones. Make our opponent sack. They're gonna sack Narcomoeba. Okay, we go to combat. Hit them for 3. Opponent goes to 7. They top deck something. Crab 2. Okay. We draw Flagstones. So play Flagstones, keep the new one. Tutor up any planes we have left in the deck. Go to combat. Attack for 3. Okay, take our opponent to 4. Worst case scenario, my opponent top decks a Greenland, mills themselves, gets a bunch of stuff, and casts Uro. That is the worst case scenario. Okay, they do nothing. We untap. We draw Smallpox. So go to combat. Attack for 3. No blocks for the opponent. Smallpox lethal. We got there. Yes. Okay, this hand does not do enough, I think. We need to get our leyline value. Our opponent also mulligan. No, our opponent chose to play with 7 cards. Brutalities might be enough here. We're going to try keeping multiple brutalities into a smallpox. I'm going to put back Unburial Rites, and we're going to start with leyline. I don't know that the white leyline is super relevant. I would have much preferred that be Leyline of the Void, but we'll see. When it starts Overgrown Tomb, into Stitcher's Supplier, milling Gurmag Angler, Verdant Catacombs, and Assassin's Trophy. We draw Liliana, so play Marsh Flats and pass. Okay, opponent plays a Breeding Pool, ventures deeper. They do mill a Gravecrawler, which they are going to cast. And they get in for 1. Crack Marsh Flats, let's get a Godless Shrine. We're not going to pay 2 life. And untap. We draw Lily. So play a Plains, we're going to 2-mode. We're going to Duress, and we are going to bite the bullet and kill Stitcher's Supplier here. Okay, they have Nature's Claim and 2 Prized Amalgams in hand. Really hope they don't mill anything good. Crab, Misty, and Glimpse. Okay. The problem is, even if we draw a land for Liliana here, we're in a really bad spot because our opponent can just cast Prized Amalgams out of hand. So they play Verdant, they crack Verdant, they get probably just like a basic Swamp. Oh, they get a Watery Grave, okay. And they play Amalgam. Alright, we draw Iona. So they're holding 1 unknown. I think we Brutality pitching Iona, and we're just going to kill and drain. They don't have any... what's it called? They don't have any Vengevines in their grave, so them having the Gravecrawler in their graveyard kind of just slows them down just a little bit. So we need to start top-decking lands into some serious action here. Alright. They milled an Amalgam and an Archamoeba here. So we basically have to top-deck land, a black land, so we can play Liliana and downtick. Then top-deck land and Wrath, and hope to not die in the process. I don't know how we can do that or if that's possible. I think I needed to mulligan to actual leyline. Alright. Yeah, we're gonna die. That's unfortunate. I probably should have mulliganed more aggressively, but our opponent did have the Nature's Claim, so had we started off with leyline, they would have just gotten us, or gotten us with that and did exactly what they did. So unless we had multiple leyline, I think we were probably not gonna win that. However, look at that. We beat Tron, we 2-1'd an Oops All Spells deck. Then we've 1-2'd both of our other games. Like, we've janked our opponent out at least once really hard. And in the case of the last opponent, we actually, like, ground them out, and it was pretty awesome. Leyline of the Void, double Leyline of Sanctity is either going to be insanely good or really bad versus our opponent. But this is effectively a mulligan to 3 with Unburial Rites and 2 lands and an uncastable card. If my opponent is playing Burn, I'd be really happy to keep this, but I think I've got a mulligan for a hand that has just a little more generic action. This I will keep. I'm going to put back a Flagstones of Trocaire. Okay. And I guess we're going to see what our opponent plays. I'm going to start Urborg. I think that is the least telling of our lands that we could play. Okay, opponent starts Forest, Lantern of Insight. We're top-decking a Liliana here, and they are top-decking a Glimmer Void. Yeah, I think the best thing we can do right now is to Smallpox, take them off of their only mana, and get Iona out of our hand. They discard Thoughtseize, we sack Flagstones, they sack their only land. And we get a Godless Shrine, tapped. And the reason that we're getting a Godless Shrine and not a regular Plains here is because we want to preserve as much of our resources, life totals included, and Oh, Lantern of Insight. I was like, how do I know what's on top of my deck right now? The opponent takes Lily. We untap. Draw Swamp. Play Swamp. Play Lingering Souls. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent plays a second Glimmer Void. And a Codex Shredder. Maybe a second Lantern here. Yep. Okay. We untap. They do let us draw that Glimmer Void. Or, I mean, Leyline of the Void. I don't know why I said Glimmer Void. Getting a little frazzled. That's alright. Opponent mills themselves. Putting Goblin Engineer in the grave. Pithing Needle on top. Okay, attack for 2. Opponent does only have 1 card in hand, so I think they're starting to look for maybe an Ensnaring Bridge. Okay, they draw Ghost Quarter. They play Ghost Quarter. They Inquisition us to get down to an empty hand. They see we have an empty hand. We top deck a land, and there's a Chancellor on top of our deck. So flashback Lingering Souls, and get in for 2. Just going to try and beat them down before they can find an Ensnaring Bridge. They only have 1 mill rock, but they are already empty-handed. Okay, they mill Assassin's Trophy. They draw a Lantern. They play a Lantern. Pass. We draw Chancellor. Go to combat. Attack for 4. So opponent is currently on a 4-turn clock. They have 4 turns and a few draws to try desperately to find Ensnaring Bridge. Now, Inventor's Fair, if they draw it, can tutor for Ensnaring Bridge, but it requires them to have 1 more mana than they have. Alright, play Marsh Flats. Go to combat. The fetch land actually is very nice because it will let us manipulate our top deck. And we want to top deck a land so we can play this Chancellor. I think. Okay. When it gains 1 life, they draw Gilded Goose. They play Gilded Goose. They make a food token. I actually kind of want to take Collective Brutality here. If my opponent lets me have it, I'll use it. They let me have it. So we're going to 2-mode, and we are going to kill and drain. Pitching Chancellor. Okay, opponent's going to gain 3 life. Hit them for 4. They mill a card off the top, revealing a Glimmer Void. Or we hit them 4/4 down to 5. They're going to untap and gain a life. They draw Glimmer Void. So this will let them Inventor's Fair. They're also going to be top decking a Wren and 6. They mill our Smallpox. Are they going to let us have a Liliana, or are they going to crack a Lantern of Insight? Because they might. They have no cards in hand. Liliana does not provide any intrinsic value except if she ults. And if she ults, we can just go all of your impermanents versus Ensnaring Bridge. I don't know if my opponent would ever let it get that far, but I am going to take her just kind of as insurance here. Opponent cracks Inventor's Fair on our upkeep, getting Ensnaring Bridge. Why would you do that? Oh, okay, to shuffle our library, okay. Oh, we're going to crack Marsh Flats, manipulate our own top deck. See if we can't get hand hate for Ensnaring Bridge. Godless Shrine. Tapped, I guess. We draw Lingering Souls. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for 4. They go to 2. Then we're going to cast Lingering Souls. I'm not going to flash it back, though. So the problem is, right now, my opponent is top decking... No, never mind. I was going to say they're top decking a Thoughtseize, but if they top deck a card that they can't play alongside Ensnaring Bridge, they're going to lose. Gilded Goose is something that does count, unfortunately for us. So our opponent plays a Gilded Goose, and they play an Ensnaring Bridge. We can no longer attack. We untap, though, and we top deck Unburial Rites. So we're going to Unburial Rites Iona and name black. This way, if my opponent draws a black card, they can no longer cast it, and all it takes is 1 card for them, or 1 card they can't cast and they lose. So Reanimate Iona, name black. Pass the turn. We'll see if our opponent picks this up, or picks up on what we're doing here. They mill the top card of their deck, and they draw an Assassin's Trophy that they cannot cast. Opponent Ghost Quarters themselves, desperately trying to draw a non-black card. Alright, they found a Glimmer Void. They make a food. Alright, we untap. They crack a food and gain some life. We draw Shining Shoal. So, on Burial Rites on Chancellor. And then Lingering Souls. Because they are going to potentially top deck a Grafdigger's Cage here. It is one of their safer top decks. We do need to start top decking non-land cards, which is difficult when your opponent has Codex Shredder. Pass the turn. I don't think our opponent can kill us with damage, and they're gaining a lot of life every turn. Sorin doesn't do anything, unfortunately. Okay, opponent Ancient Stirrings. They just pick up Prismatic Vista and play it. I really feel like we're probably pretty soft to an Ensnaring Bridge. The stupid goose. Okay, we draw Sorin. Play Sorin. Uptick. Make vampires. Pass the turn. So at this point, to stem our opponent from gaining life, we're going to have to alt Sorin. But short of my opponent casting a Renin 6, which will give them no value due to Leyline, alright, they throw out a Welding Jar. I think our only out is alting Lily, and I don't think we have enough turns to actually alt Lily. Not to mention we're never drawing her. So play Flagstones. We have to uptick Sorin. Pass the turn. Boy, isn't this fun magic, that this deck is allowed continued existence. Alright. Okay, opponent plays another Ensnaring Bridge. We draw another Chancellor. Uptick Sorin. Play Chancellor number 2. Pass the turn. Stony Silence should be quite good versus our opponent's deck, as should the Hand Hate, I guess. We can take out all of our Wraths and creature removal. Pass the turn. At this point, I think I'm going to concede. Well, no, it only takes them drawing literally one black card. And we win. Ugh. There's Lily. She gets milled immediately. Okay. Well, our opponent has too many top deck manipulations now because after they play like Pixis, the only way that we could possibly win is if our opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 black cards in a row on top of their deck. I think we did have some clever play around there with Iona. I don't think it was good enough. Well, I mean, it wasn't good enough, obviously, but I don't think we ever really stood a chance there. Alright, Stony Silence in. I'm going to bring in Surgical, Thoughtseizes, Inquisitions, and Fields. I'm going to go down Collective Brutality, Elish Norn, Sunscour, Soul Spike, Chancellor, all of our removal. I kind of want to bring in Damping Sphere. Maybe we just leave the Collective Brutalities and maybe the Duress mode is actually good enough. Alright, we'll try it like this. This might work. Maybe. Without the ley lines, it's going to be tough, but we have a lot of action, so I think I've got to keep. I really hope this Inquisition is going to be enough. Alright, opponent has 2 Codex Shredders, a Cling to Dust, an Ancient Stirrings, and their own Inquisition of Kozilek. I think taking Lantern of Insight is the most powerful thing we can do here, so I'm going to take Lantern. Opponent can do some blind milling, and they might, like, they can even cast a Ancient Stirrings next turn, but it's not going to do too much right now. If we had top decked a Black Source there, actually casting Smallpox and taking our opponent off their only land would have been fantastic as well. So they mill a Flagstones. They top deck a land, which is pretty good for them. Inquisition. I think they take Lily. That's something that I don't think they can just let us have. Because we can just go all of your permanents versus Ensnaring Bridge. That sort of thing. Alright. They crack Prismatic Vista, they get a Forest. And Goose. We untap. Draw a Ley Line of the Void. F6. They mill another Flagstones. Stirrings. Opponent's getting kind of lucky with the Blind Mills here. They get a Glimmer Void. Goose 2. Golden Boogaloo. They mill Field. Alright, Cling to Dust. They hit Lily. Draw a card. Swing 0, send a message. Oh, okay. Alright, I'm not playing this out. Executive decision. Could we have won? Maybe. Were like, what would I put our odds of winning that at? Like maybe 35-40%. It's a tough matchup. Okay, so what did we learn about the deck? Doing broken things, like turn 0, putting down ley lines. If our ley lines hose our opponent, especially in game 1 when they're not expecting it, we're probably going to take the match. If our opponent is like Ponza, and we smallpox them, there's a good chance we're going to take the match. Versus, we didn't play against Mono Red, which was my like dream matchup, because we have like free Lightning Helixes, free Force Spikes, Shining Shoals to just exile and redirect damage so their creatures kill themselves. Like, we have Smallpox, we have Hand Hate, we have Wraths of God, we have Collective Brutalities. Like, I was really hoping we would play against Mono Red. So, all in all, I think this deck is pretty sweet. I think there's some adjustments you can make. I think that you could play a Karn package in this deck that it would play quite a bit differently. You wouldn't be able to rely as heavily on your pitch spells, though then again, Soul Spike and things like that, probably not exactly what I would call worth it. I think this deck would make a great meta call against a really heavy aggro meta. And the sideboard probably needs a little bit of work. But like I said, I just picked up this list because I had it from laying around for forever. And I was looking forward to playing it again when we got Liliana's. And I was like, oh yeah, rack. I bought Liliana's. We can play this deck. Anyway, let me know if you like this content and you want to see more like it. This one was a very spicy one. We were very close to a 4-1. Both of our 1-2 matchups, I think if I had mulliganed better, I actually could have won. But... you know, I'm not totally certain. Anyway, leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined, and remember, if you want to see me playing decks like this live, you can catch me Wednesdays on Twitch at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, see you guys there. Bye!